All right, thank you very much for that presentation. I don't think we have any questions. So what we're going to do now, by the way, I'm Norbert Kaminski, and I will be moderating the first portion of the third session today. And so as Lisa Alward mentioned and conveyed in the introduction to the workshop, the first two sessions were really focused on where we are currently, kind of the state of the art of the technology. And then throughout most of yesterday afternoon, we had examples of how gene editing tools are now being utilized primarily for mechanistic research. And what we'd like to do today is really focus now on the application of these tools into the future. And so I think one of the things that we really need to think about a little bit, and just to recap maybe a little bit from yesterday, is that the strengths as well as some of the challenges and limitations of this technology will certainly impact us on how we move forward using these tools. And as somebody who is just beginning to use some of these tools, what we really learned yesterday in terms of some of the strengths was the speed in which we can do genome editing now. And another really important strength is ability to basically apply this technology to virtually any organism. We have excellent specificity in terms of these tools, and probably maybe one of the most important things in terms of really utilizing these two tools widely is they're available now off the shelf. So we're now creating in our own laboratories new tools. We can just purchase them at reasonable cost, and we also heard how easy they are to use. In fact, there are a lot of analogies about how many undergraduates it would take to do this and to do that. So that's all fine and good. Probably more importantly is we heard about some of the challenges and limitations. And so let me just cover a couple that I heard yesterday. One being the ability to do single nucleotide substitutions. That sounds like that's still a bit of a challenge. The application of these tools for epigenome editing, that seems like that's still on the horizon. We also heard a little bit about the fact that these tools are very good for either knocking things out or knocking genes or portions of genes in, giving us kind of an all or none effect. But as we know, many of the environmental chemicals that we study and agents, they modulate pathways. And so being able to utilize these tools more in the way of a rheostat rather than an all or none effect, I think will be very important. And it sounds like we're starting to gain that capability. And then as we closed yesterday, we also heard about some of the limitations in terms of the bottlenecks in the workflow. And we heard yesterday that one of the bottlenecks still is this idea of establishing colonies from single cells. So that's very time consuming, and that's an inherent piece of all of this. And then also still the validation in terms of the editing that we do, so still requiring PCR and sequencing. So today what we want to do is really begin to focus not only on the future, but the application of these genome editing tools in terms of risk assessment, in terms of informing regulatory decisions, informing medical practice, and then also utilizing these tools to develop new research strategies for environmental health science research. And that's really going to be the focus today. And so the way this session 3 is organized is we'll start by having two 20-minute presentations. One focused primarily on designing research to inform environmental risk assessment, and then the second one will be focused on designing research to inform medical practice. And then we'll follow that up with a panel discussion, and this panel discussion will be organized a little bit differently. We've invited 3 of our speakers from yesterday to take about 5 minutes and 1 slide to start us off. and basically set the stage for what we hope to be kind of a brainstorming session on how research using these genome editing tools can be leveraged to inform specific actions. So how can we begin to utilize these for public health and regulatory decisions as an example? And then we'll close out with a second panel discussion that will be moderated by Trey Thomas, which is going to focus on perspectives on use of genome editing research on environmental health decisions. So that's really how we're organized for this morning's session. So I'd like to begin by introducing our first speaker, Keith Hoke from the US EPA, and he's going to take a little time to talk about designing research to inform environmental risk assessment. Thank you, Keith.